First, let me speak a little bit about, because we're moving into what's called epistemology. Does anybody remember what epistemology means? Yes. Episteme is one of many Greek words for knowledge. And in the study of knowledge, we study and investigate various things. Can we know anything? How do we know? What are certain problems trying to acquire knowledge? We've already touched a little bit about that when we were talking about the transcendental argument as well. And an issue that rises in epistemology, or the study of knowledge, is something we call skepticism. What is skepticism, or to be skeptical? Yes. Doubting, yeah. Questioning, doubting. Why would somebody want to doubt?
Maybe to stay away from the truth.
Possibly, or the converse of that, the opposite. You doubt in order not to fall for falsehood. Not to be gullible. By the way, did you know if you actually look up in the dictionary, gullibles actually has a Z in it? Yep. Gullible, if you look it up in the dictionary, has a Z in it. You didn't know that, did you? See, you passed the test. There is no. Hey, what did you use? You used skepticism. Nuh-uh, I don't believe it. Yeah, right. There is a purpose in using skepticism and doubt in order to find knowledge. Now, of course, you can be a radical skeptic that just doubts everything, but that seems to be a bit silly, because therefore you would never assent to believing in anything. You just sit, and it doesn't, I always say this, it doesn't take any mental horsepower to be that type of radical skeptic, the person in the back of the room that says, nuh-uh, I don't believe it, It's like, well, we're all really proud of you, and you get a gold star because that was so hard just to say nuh-uh to everything. So you can see that you can use it and go too far in the extreme, but it has its use as far as not falling for falsehood and being able to discover what's true. What is Descartes doing? He has these, this is called the Meditations on First Philosophy. He's having various meditations and the things that he's thinking about. And what does it say if you have your books or your notes? Meditation 1, what is it entitled?
On what can be called into doubt?
Yes. What do you think his answer to that question is? What can be called into doubt? Everything. What are the reasons that he gives for that? Why would you want to doubt everything? Now again, let me make the distinction between there's doubting for the sake of doubting. That's that sort of radical skepticism where you never assent to anything. I don't believe in anything. That is not what Descartes is doing. Descartes is doubting in order to find certitude and knowledge. But first, he says, doubt everything. Why? How does doubt even come up? It's right there in the first line of the paragraph. Maybe I can pop up.
You realize that he accepted falsehood when he was younger?
Yeah, he had experienced accepting false things that are false. You're absolutely right. Let me see if I can pop up Meditations just to make it easier for you on first philosophy. Therefore, you can have your own text. We don't want to read the preface. Don't want a preface. I want the meditation. There we go. Do I need to zoom in more? And then I'll move over the... There we go. That's perfect. You see that okay? It is now some years since I detected how many were the false beliefs that I had from my earliest youth, admitted as true, and how doubtful everything was. How doubtful was everything I had since constructed on this basis. And from that time, I was convinced that I must once for all seriously undertake to rid myself of all the opinions. Now remember, the word opinions, mere belief, doxa in Greek, is contrasted to knowledge. Knowledge, traditionally defined in philosophy, is a true belief with justification, or a true justified belief. Because as we spoke last time, you might have a true belief and it's not knowledge. For example, lucky guesses. Oh, there are 132 jelly beans in the jar, hidden under here. You get it right, you have a true belief, but it's not knowledge unless you have good evidence or sufficient evidence, i.e. justification for that. So we need these three things in order to have knowledge. Something must be true. Your belief must match up, be a true belief, and you must have justification for that. That is doxa, or opinion, is just belief. So we don't want just a belief, we want a true belief, and we want to have sufficient justification for it in order that it could be knowledge. There are several positions within epistemology, one of which is what Descartes would ascribe to and what most philosophers traditionally had subscribed to. It's called foundationalism. And when you hear the word foundational, what do you think of? A bedrock, or something that can support everything above it. And that's exactly the way beliefs work. If I asked you, how do you know we're in Fullerton? What would you say? So that's a belief. Hopefully it's true, and we have justification for it. But if I asked you, how do you know that we're in Fullerton? What would you say?
We're in Fullerton College.
How do we know that?
We're in a classroom at Fullerton College.
Okay, how do we know somebody didn't just, how do we know we're not in Laguna Niguel and somebody just wrote up Fullerton College? How do we know that somebody didn't just add the wrong zip code to, how do I know that that goes to the Fullerton, to Fullerton? And I can keep, do you notice that each answer you give, you could say, well, because somebody told me, because everybody asks us so, because the community established it thus. Whatever that first belief that we're asking, and we want to know is, do we actually know that? There is no belief that stands really on its own, or very few. They all depend on something else, like you said, because we're in Fullerton College. But we applied skepticism there, and we saw, well, what if somebody just misnamed it? Oh, well, here's a perfect example. There's a Fullerton College in Garden Grove. That's not full. Do you see? So it could be misleading. It could be just because we name it Fullerton doesn't mean that we're necessarily in Fullerton, because you could have campuses elsewhere. All of that's just simply to illustrate that it depends on another proposition that you hope that you know, that's knowledge. And if you ask, yeah, but how do I know that to be true? You're going to say, well, because this person told, well, how do I know what they're saying is true? Because, and it just keeps going down.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So it just keeps on going down, but wouldn't there have to be some, like, for example, I would have just assumed that the reason why everyone knows of a certain place is because it's been established, it's been, I guess a community came to a sense where they just established one thing and that's what it would be, and the percentages.
Yeah, and that's the idea that eventually you ground out in something. And Aristotle talks about this, that if it just kept going, remember, if it's turtles all the way down, then you don't know anything. It has to ground out in some sort of foundation where you don't have to provide another demonstration, or it doesn't depend on another knowledge proposition. And it grounds out, like you said. Now the question is, would that be sufficient foundations or not for establishing all of that? But the idea is that almost all propositions that we hold to be true are not self-sufficiently true. They depend on prior propositions. That is the idea. And we could use something maybe more complicated. For example, how do we know the sky's blue? And you could say, because that's what I'm seeing, but then you could say another person's seeing it as green. And you could get into the whole science of light refraction. And it keeps going. The idea is that that's going to have to ground. If it, like Aristotle says, if it keeps going, there is no foundation. You're just passing the buck. There is no knowledge.
If you're talking about more like argument perspective, wouldn't, like, sky is blue, that's more perspective rather than factual, right? Wouldn't it? Because people, I guess, like you're saying, like, oh, this person is seeing a different color.
Well, that's why science has now removed the. It used to be that way. How do you define what blue is? You'd only have to do it ostensibly. Oh, by this. But I don't know what you're experiencing when we say that. And so what science did is it attempted to carve off any subjective perspective, and they defined it in objective terms that blue is what? 300 nanometers or something like. I know red's 600 nanometer wavelength. Now that isn't dependent. That's an objective factual statement that's not dependent upon perspective. Yes, sir. Question? No. But you see the idea that, and you can do this with people. It's a good tactic that when somebody says that they know something, just keep asking, well, how do you know that? And they say, well, because this, because. And this is really what Socrates does in the dialogues. All these people are running around thinking they know all this stuff. He just asks questions. He doesn't even have to put forward a positive argument of knowing anything. He simply just questions and questions and questions until people realize that they don't know what they're talking about. That they just, ultimately, these are just grounded out on assumptions. They don't know why they believe. And that's the case with most people today. What happens if it does ground out in a true proposition that you could know, so a true justified belief, and then that supports number 2, and 2 supports number 3, and 3 supports proposition 4 of how you know we're in Fullerton, the city of Fullerton. Now you can say, yeah, I know that. But what happens if any one of these that proposition 4 is dependent upon ends up being false? And you based the whole deck of cards, house of cards comes crashing down. Now, can you imagine, and Descartes points this out, he says from time to time that he's noticed that he's been taught false or ascribed to false beliefs, propositions. He has the option of going through listing every single belief that he's ever held to, and then somehow figuring out some type of methodology to figure out, well, is that true and which one's true and which one's false? But pushing aside the question of, well, how would you even figure out a methodology? If you don't know if you know anything, how are you going to know about a method to apply? Let's just push that question aside and just ask a practical question. How long would it take you to list out every single belief that you hold, that you've accumulated through your life? And then how long, let's say if you did have a correct method, to go through and cross out, okay, that one's no good, I was lied to there, somebody gave me the wrong information. It'd be endless. You'd never accomplish the task. So what do you think Descartes does? And it kind of goes back to what you were saying when I asked, what can be called into doubt? Rather than going piecemeal through each proposition, what would be faster? Okay. Or go back to your answer, your first what you said to me.
Question everything.
Everything. Throw everything out and start over.
So just basically just on your own beliefs at that point. How would you?
How many people have ever done, let's say, work on a house, and you start digging into something, and you think, all right, I put $500 or $1,000 away to fix this, and you start digging into it's like, we got water damage, the electrical's out, it just keeps going, and then it's like then the water damage is spread out through the house. Next thing you know, you got termites. Then you pull up the carpeting, it's all black mold. At some point, are you just going to have a money pit where you just let's just fix each individual thing? Yeah. A boat, that's a perfect, yeah. At some point, I imagine you're going to be like, burn the mother down. Just, we'll rebuild, demolish it. It's going to be too expensive and time-consuming going piece by piece trying to fix everything. Wouldn't it just be better to tear the whole thing down and build back up from a solid foundation? That's what Descartes' doing. And the way he does that is he calls everything into doubt. I can't trust anything. Now, that is skepticism, and it is a form of radical skepticism, but is it for the purpose of staying skeptical forever, or is it for the purpose of actually finding something certain, according to Descartes? The latter, to find, he's calling everything into doubt so that he can find something that is not capable of being doubted. Indubitable.
Is that possible? Like come to something that is undoubtable?
Yeah, what do you think about? Let me give a definition of what that actually means. Because like we said, anybody can say, "Nuh-uh, I don't believe it, I'm doubting." What Descartes means and philosophers mean by indubitable can't be doubted without contradicting yourself. So we could rephrase your question. Are there things that you can doubt, or are there things that can't be doubted without contradicting yourself? So if I said, oh, I don't believe that, and you end up contradicting yourself.
So if you doubt, like, the sun exists, is then, like, you see the sun, you, like, contradict.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking for. Give me some examples where if you doubted it, you'd end up contradicting yourself. And remember, contradiction is something very narrow and specific. It's when you end up affirming and denying the subject at the same time and in the same manner of speaking. We like to use the example of married bachelors. Are there any married bachelors? Possible? Well, maybe I can. Well, no, because you end up contradicting yourself, because bachelor means an unmarried gentleman. You cannot say that, yeah, I'm actually doubting there might be somewhere in the universe a married. No, because it's a not.
Tells, women in a bar that they're single when they're married. Yes, but
Yeah.
that's not the same thing.
Sort of. Isn't it?
Or what if, like, you get married and, like, you never, like, you're young and stupid, and you get married. And I say that because I was one of those people, but you get married, and then, like, what if you, like, separate that person and never really get divorced because you're, like, you don't really see what the marriage is, and then you go, like, 20 years, find the love of your life, and then, like...
That's why you have to say in the same way. Are you married in the same way or unmarried in the same? So it needs to be at the same time and in the same way. So somebody could not be married and unmarried, or single and married in the same sense of the word at the same time. A person could be married at one time and not, or be married in a different sense. Wedded. We're wedded to all kinds of different things.
You would still be legally married. So, I mean,
That forces you to make a distinction that, well, in spirit, I am not married anymore, but under the law, I am. Well, it's like, well, you're using different senses of marriage there. That's right.
I guess it can become a contradiction in the same way that, like, maybe somebody's going to AA would call themselves a sober alcoholic. Both of those things can be true, because at one point they were an alcoholic.
Yeah, would you think that's a contradiction or not? Because you mean you're making a distinction in the way. So one is an alcoholic who is embracing his addiction. Somebody that is just not a quitter. Just like, you know what? Quitters for losers. I'm going to keep up my addiction, even if it costs me my family and my life. But a sober alcoholic is one who mentioned, I'm an addict who's not actively engaging in addictive behavior, so I'm sober, but I'm always an addict. That would probably be. Now you made a distinction so that you don't have the apparent contradiction. Good job, guys. Well, can you think of anything that's indubitable? Things that are so true you can't even doubt. Well,
Existence?
yeah, what does Descartes do with that? Well, let's see, meditation. Oh, it's even in meditation 1. What about mathematics? 2 plus 2 equals 4. Can I doubt that? Well, let me ask it this way. What does Descartes think? Does Descartes think you can doubt that? And by doubt, we mean doubt without contradicting oneself. Okay, then reformulate it in, if I doubt it, how am I affirming and denying the subject in the same way at the same time?
calling yourself a flat earther when you can see the curvature of the earth.
But you could be perceiving it in a different way or something like that. What he does is he creates the evil demon is a methodological device to test or to present a scenario. And what if, can you conceive, and you can use sci-fi, fantasy, whatever you want, is kind of a narrative in which, if this were the case, I'm not saying it is, but under these conditions, I couldn't know anything. Not even 2 + 2 = 4. Because you said that 2 + 2 = 4 can't be doubted. But what if I did brain surgery? What if I MK Ultra'd you? And made you think that 2 + 2 is 4 and it's actually 5? Would you know? That what I just presented to you is a form of doubt. Maybe under a kind of science fiction or fictional account, but it doesn't really matter. It's just I'm making that story to illustrate, could there possibly be, in the realm of imagination, any scenario that you can think of in which, man, if it was like this, I really wouldn't be able to know anything.
So can it be doubted that you're doubting? If I'm not actually one thinking his thoughts and I'm being manipulated to be like thinking that I'm doubting, is that really doubting?
Yeah, let's say I'm the evil scientist. I am. Could I create that in you, that you're doubting? This is what Descartes' going through. He's thinking through exactly what you're doing. Is that now, instead of the mad scientist, he posits for the story, imagine there's an evil demon that's all powerful, or powerful enough to make you think that 2 + 2 = 4. By the way, how well is your mathematics when you're dreaming?
Oh, very well. Freaking Einstein.
Really?
I honestly don't think about math.
Yeah, I don't think about math. I think I was thinking about math the other day. That's not my
What I would get when I was doing a lot of mathematics, I'd sit there doing propositions all night and then try to go to bed. It's like you ever play video games too long and then try to go to bed? What do you see?
Video games, Grand Theft Auto streams.
Yeah. That would happen with math, and I couldn't get a peaceful sleep. But what was really strange is I had this episode that I was like trying to figure out. It's like right when you're drifting off, and I kept thinking about this problem. It's like, oh, stop thinking about this. And then I went to sleep, and it was the strangest thing. It's like I saw like these kind of like Tetris bricks all of a sudden when I was kind of going off to sleep, and they all kind of lined up. And somehow, it doesn't make any sense in my waking life, but the way that they lined up, I was like, oh my gosh, that derivation makes total sense. And it's like, now try to wake up and explain how the well, you see, Professor, the Tetris bricks, when they line up like this, that's how the equation works. They'd be like, yeah, okay, we're locking you up. But in my mind, I thought that the mathematics worked through some visual illustration that in the waking world was absurd. That doesn't make any sense. If that's possible for me to be deceived that much even about mathematics in my dreams, and I thought I had certitude, how do I know I'm not being deceived? Now, and he brings up this whole thing about dreaming. It's a good point that we pick up from dreaming. What if we're just in a dream? Have you ever thought about that?
So you're dreaming, and then you go into deep sleep, and you dream again.
I've had that. I can go inside of a dream, like Inception.
I've had lucid dreams where I try to explain to people in my dreams that I was dreaming, and they were part of my subconscious. They didn't care.
Yeah, do you know what, by the way, do you guys know what lucid dreaming is?
That's where you're conscious,
You become, you're sleeping, but you become aware that you're actually in a dream. And at that point, if you can become aware of that, I'm just dreaming, you can actually control things. I can cue up music. I found that everything I've learned is stored in your brain. You might have forgotten languages or certain things. They're not lost. They're back there. You just don't know how to retrieve them. What's really interesting is that stuff comes all back out and can be retrieved in your dreams. You just have to learn how to be able to do it. And I can train you how to do that through MK Ultra. No, I'm kidding. What you do is, before you go to sleep, start telling you need to create a kind of memory to insert, like an inception, into your dream. And what you want to do is, I'm dreaming. I'm only dreaming. This is just a dream. You just repeat this until you can establish a memory that you can take back into the dream with you. And if you can remember and retrieve that memory while you're dreaming, I'm just dreaming, then you can go, oh, like.
Have you realized that you are in a dream? Like you're dreaming and you realize that you're in a dream?
That's lucid dreaming. Once you're in a dream and you realize you're in a dream, then you can control things. Now, I don't often like the ability to, I get bored. I'm like, I like the surprise and being shocked by stuff and amazed, like, wow. But it's like, yeah, I've already seen it. I already know how to do this. Like, yeah. Yeah. And the more you practice, the better you can get at this. Like I said, when you read something, it's stored into your brain. Remember the Aristotle, that is pressed in, that sense perception is pressed in on your tabula rasa, your potential intellect, your ability to retrieve it's another thing.
So the saying you can dream it, you can live it is an actual thing then?
If you live it, you can dream it.
No, you can dream it, you can live it.
Yeah, people say that, but in this scenario. Okay, so you've probably had, yes, sir.
How would you say then, like, you retrain yourself to, like, become better at lucid dreaming, like, remembering?
You practice, the more times you do it, you'll become more familiar on how to get in. It's called a dream hack. You're hacking your dreams. And, yeah. What? Oh, yeah. And I'll come back to dreams where it's like, I've been here before. I feel like I've had this dream like when I was 13. And now I'm back here again, which is very possible. But I bring all this up to ask you, have you ever had dreams that are so real that you couldn't tell? They become qualitatively so that you can feel the pain. How do you tell, what do you do personally to be able to tell, okay, this isn't real? Now, how many people have heard of sleep paralysis? I used to get sleep paralysis all the time.
How do you stop it?
You get a wife to like wake you up and.
And like I always like see just something out like the corner of my eyes freaks the crap out of me.
Oh yeah, mine start with demonic.
Almost, yeah, exactly.
This is not an uncommon. Look up sleep paralysis, and people are always experiencing. They think that like these alien abductions that either that's probably the government, right, dressed up as grays. Like check this out. They'll think it's aliens, right? We're just doing experiments on them. Or they think a lot of these are sleep paralysis because oftentimes most people have either. Do you know what a succubus is?
Yeah.
It's the mythological or demonic creature that sits on your chest and it like pulls the breath out of, and you feel paralyzed. It goes back a ways in literature. Or people experience they're abducted and they're like, it's so real. But sleep paralysis is so real. Now, this is typically when it happens. It's when you're trying to come out, you're waking up. But when you're sleeping, your body is put into kind of hibernation mode so that you can't. Can you imagine if you're running and jumping in your dream, if your thoughts were connected to your body, and you like get up and like fly out the window? It would be very dangerous. So there's a purpose that we're designed in a way that our body shuts down. You can't, for the most part, hear things going on. Your senses just go into hibernation mode, and then your mind can. Yes, sir.
There was actually like tried often seeing the same things, and he was fascinated by this idea that culturally these people might not have been connected to each other in any way aside from living in the same area, and they all saw the same things and were so afraid of that that they, denied themselves sleep until they died.
Wow. Like Freddy Krueger. Yeah.
Is that Wes Craven's inspiration, maybe?
Nightmare on Elm Street might have been pulled from nobody wants to go to sleep because then Freddy's going to come and get you. And okay, here's how mine start off. And again, I haven't had this for years, thank God.
What's going to happen? And when you come back from class on Thursday, you're going to
I doubt it. I figured out. I read Descartes. I figured out how to fix this stuff. Don't you see why philosophy has practical purpose? Well, I remember when I was a kid, I'd get scary nightmares, and you try to wake up, and you can't get up, and you're like trying to scream for your parents. It's like so frustrating. It's very much like that if that's not actually sleep paralysis itself. It occurred later when I was an undergraduate, and then I just, I didn't really make too much of it until I was married. And my wife woke up one night with like a bad feeling. And in my dream, now I would never do this in waking life. In my dream, and I never see anything physically, but it's like I feel like something entered the room. Or if it's like somebody, when you're in a car and you feel like somebody's next to you's watching and you look and they're like, you're like, it was somebody looking at me weird. Like, it's kind of like that feeling where you can feel, I think there's somebody behind me, or that kind of feeling, but it did not feel like a good vibe and good entity. And I immediately knew it was evil. And then there's two parts of me. There's the part of my emotions that's scared, that's frightened, and then there's the curious part that's like, yeah, but what the heck is that thing? And my curious part always in the dreams would get the better of me. And so I'd be like, you know what? I know I'm scared. I don't want to look behind me, but I'm going to look anyways. And I don't see anything. It's crazy. And sure enough in the dream, I'm like, up on the, crawling on the ceiling, break out. And, everything speeds up. And now I'm terrified because I'm like, oh, my God, what did I do? Why did I inquire into this entity? And then I'm trying to wake up because now I'm absolutely terrified and I'm locked, and it feels like where I'm like, man, I think somebody drugged me. Or it feels like somebody turned up the gravity meter where it's like, okay, I'm getting up and I'm like, and I can see everything around me in the room. I can see even the time on the clock. I think what's probably happening is I'm probably getting a little bit of my eyes open or something like that, and it puts so I'm halfway between sleep and halfway waking, but my body's not responding. And in fact, I realize I'm not getting up. I'm back in bed, and it's like, okay, let's try it again. I'm like, ugh. And then I realize I'm still sleeping. All of this is in my mind, and there is no physical connection with my body getting up. But each time seems so real. I could see everything around me, and I only knew that it was not real, when I woke up. But what if I'm just still stuck in the dream mode? I wouldn't know unless I woke up again. And it's like I could just keep waking, because it's exactly like that in sleep paralysis. It's like, okay, this is the real time now. It seems much more real that I'm actually getting up just really tired. And it's like, no, it's not. You're still sleeping. Descartes kind of entertains this idea. So you might have had some experiences like that, or again, you've had a very, very vivid dream that it seems real. You can feel pain. You can smell things. Died in dreams. And the only way that you know it's real is that you wake up and you simply compare qualitatively. This feels more real than that, and therefore you make some sloppy conclusion that therefore it is, because it feels. I feel all kinds of crazy stuff that's not real. No, you're not. I doubt it. You're sleeping and dreaming that you're stretching. We could end up waking up and realize, wow, I thought all of this. And also you might have had dreams that you live out very long time sequences and then wake up. How do you know? You can't just say I wake up, because then you could just wake up out of a waking up.
Try to relax. This will feel a little weird.
This is the construct. It's our loading program. We can load anything from clothing to equipment, weapons, training simulations, anything.
Do you know what he's doing with his hands? Did you see that?
Right now, we're inside a computer program.
Is it really so hard to believe? Your clothes are different, the plugs in your arms and head are gone. Your hair has changed. Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self.
That's Cartesian too. Formal versus presentational reality.
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. This is the world that you know. The world as it was at the end of the 20th century. It exists now only as part of a neural interactive simulation that we call the Matrix. You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today. Welcome to the desert of the real.
Ooh, dang. We could use the same thing here to illustrate the point that Descartes' making, is that how do you define what is real? What you can taste or touch, smell, I can do that in my dreams. What if instead of an evil scientist, it was an evil demon making you think that all of this is real? And if you remember in the Matrix, Neo's in a pod. And he's going around before he takes the red pill and wakes up. That's why they call waking up to these things red pilling, is that you're waking up and seeing that it's all facade. What if instead of being in a pod, you were simply a brain in a vat, hooked up with electrodes to a computer, and the evil scientist was just putting in this program? That's possible. How would you tell? I think a lot of this stuff goes on too with even Elon Musk has talked about how do we know that we're not in a hologram? It's the same kind of idea, or a simulation. That is a nice device to put everything into. What could I know? I would think if I was just a brain in a vat, if the program was instituted into me by an evil scientist or an evil demon, I'd be walking around like Neo thinking this is all real and I have a body, and I don't.
It used to trip me out when I was in like junior high school that the only people who could see me were other people, and I couldn't see myself the way that they did. I could only see my reflection, which is a different thing than how they saw me. And for a while, I'm like, oh shit, do I even exist? Do these fuckers exist?
Yeah.
Anything exist?
Yeah, you didn't think that? I thought that stuff all the time. I thought that stuff too.
A little messed up. We actually convinced our friend that he was in a coma, and like we did this through like just years of telling him.
Through trauma-based mind control,
Kind of, yeah.
like slapping them and sleep depriving them, blaring
Actually, like, told him
country
it wasn't-
music.
For a while, he
That's MK. I'm not kidding. That's MK Ultra. That's what you just repeat. Get them tired enough to. Well, what do you think? So Descartes says, I couldn't even trust mathematics because that easily could be simulated. What do you think under those conditions that you could know? Could you know that you had a body? No, that could be produced. All of this could. That's why the Matrix is good to kind of illustrate that there's nothing that you could know. Except Descartes does say something. No matter how evil and powerful the genius or demon would be, I couldn't be deceived in this. I think that's what you were hitting on. Does anybody know? Anytime that I'm thinking, could an evil demon, all-powerful, make me think that I exist when I don't? Is that possible? Well, you could ask, who is the demon making them to think that they exist when they don't? There would have to be a I or person. Now, Descartes says, now whatever the I is, that's a different question. Maybe you're just a brain in the vat. Maybe you're just not a body. Maybe you're something. That's beside the point. Descartes saying that there would have to be, at least just grammatically, if somebody says, I'm doubting I exist, all you have to do is say, who asked that question? Was it the pen? And the person would say, no, I did. Oh, you mean the I that exist is doubting that they exist? That, brother, is a contradiction, and you can't doubt that.
So in the example you just gave, what is it? How do you define thinking?
Ooh, that's a great question. Yeah, does Descartes define what thinking is?
Because scientists can make you to make something that doesn't exist think. Like I was thinking AI, for example, like they don't exist as a person, and so can they really think?
It seems to be there has to be some awareness available, some conscious. When you have, so thinking is to have something presented to thought. But thought implies at least that you're conscious, or i.e. aware of the object or thought or idea presented to the mind, in which case somebody can make an argument that it may look like computers are thinking because they're popping out what looks to be intelligent propositions, but they could never be conscious, so they can't think. That's kind of like John Searle's argument against artificial intelligence. Yeah, it's just all computers work, if you boil it down to input, output. And what allowed AI to develop into a plausible theory that it's being funded and studied in universities is behavioralism. Behavioral. Does anybody heard of that in psychology? Yeah. Skinner? Yes. You're going to, in fact, for your homework assignment, I want you to read Gilbert Ryle, is a behaviorist, a logical behaviorist. But there's a famous joke. So in behaviorism, they think, what is it to have a belief? It's simply a disposition to. What is it to believe that it's raining? To have the disposition. It's all in outward actions. There is no internalness. Everything's just an action or a disposition. So to believe that it's raining is simply to carry umbrellas to do. So there's nothing hidden. There's no internal, personal. Everything can be objective, observable. Now this fits really great with science because we can just carve off all the subjective opinions and everything is objective. So there's a joke about two lovers that are behaviorists. And they make love. And the one behaviorist says, it was good for you. How was it for me? Was the joke. Because everything's to describe, there is no internal phenomena of thoughts for a behaviorist. It's all outward actions, behaviors, and dispositions. And so the lovers simply just describe what their mental content is to one another because they have no introspection. It's like, well, it was good for you. How was it for me? You tell me, report to me. This develops into logical behaviorism, which you'll see with Gilbert Ryle. Then it goes into functionalism, black box functionalism, and then AI and strong AI. But it's all on this kind of outward, publicly accessible. There's nothing internal to be seen. And that we model the mind basically works very much like a computer. And if that's the case, can't we just make computers to do this input, output, and then it just becomes conscious and intelligent? If the mind is simply just a computer, if functionalism, if behaviorism is true, then you can see if you buy into these principles or starting points, why you would even want to go into AI. That it's like, well, it'd be possible if this is true. Well, that's a if those things are true.
So then, like, how do we know that that isn't how do we not, how do we experience what a computer would experience, if we're all made of matter, and other living things as well, how would we not know that they don't have consciousness in some way?
Well, we'll get into that. That's what philosophy of mind's all about. So there's arguments for refuting artificial intelligence. There's arguments for. So we have to go through those arguments. They're complicated. They're difficult arguments to.
So if the idea that Descartes has that it's possible for there to be a demon or a program or something that's programming thoughts that we have,
And by the way, he means possible in the sense of, I'm thinking about this. You guys are free to go. Just remember Gilbert Ryle, Descartes myth, because this is going to set up for us to go into philosophy of mind.